He's 34 years old and he gets up at 12. His socks still match, but he didn't pay for his t-shirt. He doesn't like how things are, but that's how things is. He eats figurines like cold baked beans. He looks at himself in the mirror and says, I've forgotten how to love. Then he pulls his tiny switchblade out and poses with it for hours. He has to waste the day. He has to wait for her. He has to let the tiny little engines in his brain turn. He has some benefits, some medicine, things that stop him dreaming. Things that stop his internal monologues reaching for the ceiling. Sometimes now he feels so boring. He feels like he might chug to a halt without warning. But when the sun's out like today, he feels like it won't be that easy. He has just enough life left to be alive. If he didn't want to survive, he wouldn't be dreading winter so much, but he forgets what happens when it comes because he is so out of touch. She gets up early, but she doesn't get dressed yet. She listens to one album a day and she knows her guitar chords. She can't afford an instrument, but her mum is always working, so she assumes that it's a case of waiting. Life for her is a case of waiting. She sees flaws like tattoos in all the people and all their paintings. She sighs like a champ and she fantasizes about desire. She likes to think she's cold, but she burns like a fire. She gets money from the government, £30 a week. She used to buy bad skin, thin rib cages and be unable to sleep. But now she's kicked that habit and all those others that die hard. So she no longer lays awake and shakes under the stars. She can be proud of her shape now, lesser cutting hips. She's starting to be more than skin, and soon you'll be able to squeeze her. She still hides pimpled scars in a mask of foundation and eyeliner around those tiny pinpricks of her eyes. She looks beautiful, ragged star without a fashion. Big hair at attention, leather jacket and black tights. She is small, skinny, dark, but quiet with a vicious stare. I think that she's beautiful, but others don't seem to see it. Her friends are pretending to rap and doing ketamine off keys. They couldn't see more far away if they listened to the Bee Gees. She leaves for school like always and gets the bus like always. Silence costs nothing and therapy ain't cheap. Meanwhile, he brushes his teeth again. The sensation's better than talking. Silence costs nothing and therapy ain't cheap. He feels sorry for how things are for her, but that's just how things is. If there's some still God in the meter, he doesn't want to waste a wish. He keeps all his windows closed and doesn't pay for his t-shirts. He makes himself coffee with a measured amount of grains. Then he takes the time to iron out his single set of jeans. He feels like he loves his job and he is off to work, but it is 4:30 and he's been unemployed for months. He's going to that same park bench to meet his only friend. It's the closest thing he does to breathing, and at home he doesn't have a sofa. She has left the school by now, or at least she should have soon. Actually, she's waiting to pick up weed by someone's locker. They don't seem to have remembered, so she gets out her tiny flick knife. She forces the cheap metal off its hinges and out of sight. She grabs it all but intends to give it back when she next sees him. She doesn't need another enemy like that of a lonely evening. Her headphones go back in her ears. He doesn't listen to the radio. It's a half an hour walk for her. It's a half an hour drive for him. He pulls up in his old Jeep and she touches it with her hand. He lets her learn to drive on Sundays when the policemen aren't around. They sit on their bench, the one that's theirs, the one they know so well, through splinters and sunlight patterns and how the rain will fell. She rolls up a spliff for them. He tells her about the Crusades. He recommends library books and she posts down a big fat spliff. She takes a few tokes and passes it on so she can talk about art. She's done a few new drawings but he can't understand on his own. He has some problem processing the image, but it makes her all the more eager to try and get through, explain what they do and help him see her. She paints what he tells her about history and war, about Charlemagne's and Henry's and death. He has big plans, though he knows they aren't real, and he tells her each time they meet. He's going to write plays and make the world come alive like her drawings when she speaks. He has the stage production idea about two people falling in love. He says, love is the world's greatest secret and it's something that keeps him apart. She says, yeah, I understand. It's something that's not me and I can't draw it one bit. He says he wants to do something that's never been done where the actors will die in the end. She says, that sounds pretty powerful, but how will you rehearse? She's a scientist and that always makes him laugh. But she just laughs straight back when he says she looks the part. She teaches him out of biology textbooks and they laugh as they smoke. They laugh at the penis, the vagina, the baby, the breast, the heart, the brain and the lungs. The people in the textbook are always some people else. This they share as he rolls up a spliff. He says it's getting too dark to read, which means they both must reflect. So they pass the half a spliff in silence. Then she asked him if he dies, would he let her dissect him? He says he doesn't know because then she'd have the answers. She says, well, I know what's in you, but I already know you. It's me that's the mystery to me. He thinks awful hard with a smile and a token. He nods, he agrees. He asks if he can keep her art if she one day has to leave. She says, you can have my self-portraits. He says, well, I've never seen them. She says, well, you've never needed. She coughs on the spliff, says you could probably paint better pictures of me anyway. You're probably not as confused with what you see. He looks at her sideways. He says, do you have pictures of me? She says, what do you think I always show you? They laugh up in smoke as she flicks the roach away, and he knows that she will always keep pictures of him no matter how far she flies away. He rolls up a new spliff quickly in the light of the moon and flicks up his dusty old lighter. He feels his skin tingle in the cold and feels like they are kings and fighters. And she said, are you smoking enough there, buddy? And he said, I fucking hate Wednesdays. And she said, let's create a new week with days where you don't hate any. So they worked it out and drew it up and decided 2 days would be enough. And there would be only 2 weeks left because any more was far too much. The first day they called chalk because it can always wash off. And she didn't go to school because it would just always wash off. The second day they called darkness because it both made them so calm. And they lay there like the stars, all blindfolds in conversation, soaking up their own tears with the fabric across their eyes. Then week 1 was over and there was only 1 more left. The second chalk, they decided to be artists and broke the boundaries of the medium. They discovered that all their ideas put together produced a white wall. The second darkness came and they kissed because there was nothing else to do. She rolled up a spliff and he rolled up a spliff and they pretended it started with 2. And then the world ended and they were high when it happened, sitting on their favourite bench. They threw their weed into the fire and the whole world laughed. And they were consumed by flames. And that story there, that's what I say to you. I've built a new bench. And the place where its charred remains smouldered, you built an electrified fence. But I ask you for a gap, will you please make a gap? Will you please make the fence go around? You'd better do it now, for I'm about to die, and with my last breath I will erect this bench as a monument to them, the people who used to sit here, the people who ended the world, and the people who used to get high and have no friends, and people who once shared a kiss, people who knew what it was like to exist and how they could just be, people who are few and far between, and people who I want to be. I made it with bones and bits of old buildings, and I carved their names with a biro. I want to share it with the world and let people hear, so it's not something I know. Maybe one day more people will sit there and get high till they've lost their minds. And if it's you, I'll lean over and say I love you through smoke on a hazy mind. I love you in those moments, and your life couldn't be further from my mind. My life is a blank, and I hope you can fill it, because I left all that space for you.